Okay, one more thing before we get to the vasculature that I wanted to cover really quickly is just the basic components of the electrical system in the heart. So over here on this model, and if we had been live in lab to do this, you would have a much better idea about where the atrioventricular node is. So this is the sinoatrial node up here in green. The atrioventricular node is down between, obviously, the atrium and the ventricle, and it resides over here near the right atrium. The atrioventricular node is responsible for basically boosting the signal from the sinoatrial node. So the signal is going to spread from the sinoatrial node down through the right atrium across to the left atrium. All right, and then spread down to the atrioventricular node, which then starts descending down through the bundle of His. Now, a lot of people also call that the atrioventricular bundle. I will take either, frankly. Then the bundle of His splits into the right and left side out into Purkinje fibers. And these Purkinje fibers are what's going to be boosting, basically, the signal out to the individual myocardial cells to tell them to contract. So when a contraction starts up here in the atria, you'll see contraction initiated on the right. It spreads to the left. That's what pushes blood down into the ventricles. And then as the atrial contraction relaxes, the atrioventricular bundle then sends that electrical signal down to the myocardium in the ventricular portion of the heart, and then the ventricles contract, sending blood out through the pulmonary circulation and out to systemic circulation. So I just wanted to be sure that we talked about that really quickly. Sinoatrial node, atrioventricular node, which you can't see here, but you can see the ventricular bundles or bundles of His going out into the Purkinje fibers out associated with the myocardium. We talked a little bit about the heart and lungs here, heart and lungs. Now let's talk about vasculature for a quick minute. Now, if you remember the vasculature, and part of this will be in the lecture as well. We have the three tunics of the arteries and the veins. We have the tunica intima, which is on the very inside. Let me come to this slide here, which is on the very inside of an artery and a vein. You have the tunica media, which is going to be lots of muscle tissue. So the intima is going to be basically squamous epithelial cells, which is a little bit hard to see here. If you look on this slide, you can see sort of an epithelial layer. The tunica media is going to be the smooth muscle lining of an artery. There's a very thin tunica media in some portions of veins, in the larger veins. And then the tunica externa, which can also be called the tunica adventiva, which is connective tissue surrounding the blood vessels, protecting them and attaching them to the adjacent tissues. So the tunica adventiva over here is associated with tissue. Just sometimes it's connective tissue, sometimes it's fat, sometimes it's other muscles, depending on where in the body we're looking. What you need to understand is how the organization of an artery and a vein looks different across the span of arteries and veins. So in this particular picture, our arteries are always going to, and actually throughout the body, the artery is always going to look round because there is more musculature basically holding the artery open. A vein always looks kind of compressed and flattened. The reason for that is because the artery is maintaining blood pressure. Veins, there's virtually no blood pressure in veins, especially the large veins of the body. You're going to talk about that in physiology and how blood pressure is maintained. But basically, in the venous system, there's very low blood pressure. The venous system contains a lot of blood. It's kind of a holding pen for our blood. The arteries are really where you're looking at the generation and the maintenance of blood pressure. Capillaries, which we do not have a picture of here, are basically all tunica intima, all that squamous epithelial cell, and that's what allows the arteries to be permeable to gases. There's passage of fluids between tissues and the blood vessels, and nutrients and waste products there. Let's see, what else? So circulatory pathways that we're going to be looking at, here we go. We call this particular model blood vessel man, and some of you may have seen this. Blood vessel man was the we had a couple of these in our closet. Blood Vessel Man is going to highlight the oxygenated vasculature, which is all in red, and deoxygenated vasculature going back to the heart in blue. And so what do you need to know? I know these models are kind of scary looking. We have anterior and posterior views. So what we're going to be looking at to start with is the anterior view of Blood Vessel Man here. Here's the heart. Here's the liver. Here's the apex of the heart and the base of the heart. And so here is the aorta. So the aorta, the ascending aorta is coming out. All right, the descending aorta, you can't see it here on this particular model. We'll look at that in a few minutes. The coronary artery, we saw that on the actual heart itself. The aortic arch is the arch going around. You're going to be seeing the aortic arch and the details for the common carotid, the subclavian, and so forth on the previous picture of the heart, all right? The brachial artery are going to be these pieces of vasculature down here in the arm, okay? So the brachial arteries are where you're going to be able to find your pulse. You should be able to find your pulse both on the brachial artery and on the radial artery. So brachial is on the outside near your pinky, and radial is going to be near your thumb. And I know this looks really weird down here, but that's the way it's associated. Oh, hold on a second. I have to flip my arm out. This is brachial. Sorry. This is brachial. This is radial. Remember that the palm is facing out, so the thumb would be over here. Sorry, my bad. And then you should be able to find the ulnar, the brachial, the radial. The descending aorta, you can't see on this picture. We'll be looking at that in a few minutes. The common iliac, the femoral, and the pulmonary trunk. These are going to be the blue blood vessels on the back of the heart right here, going out to the lungs. So this is going to be a part of the pulmonary trunk going out to the right lung. They're not showing the pulmonary vasculature going out, the pulmonary arteries going out to the left lung. They're showing instead the pulmonary veins coming into the left atrium over here, all right? So here are the arm veins. Remember, we're looking at, again, veins where with the arms, the palms facing out towards you. Here's the front. This is all anterior. Right here is the descending aorta. It goes behind the liver. We'll look at another picture of that in a minute. And so when you're looking at this, this is going to be radial, medial, and then ulnar. And then here are the forearm arteries again. Over here would be radial and then ulnar.
Riser.
Oh, making a video. Sorry about that. Here are the blood vessels going down to the legs. You need to be able to identify going down the femoral. The femoral artery would be this large artery right here. The femoral veins are coming up through here. These three blood vessels going down your legs are important. Now, the femoral artery is super important because that is a really large artery. When the femoral artery is, or the femoral vein for that matter, gets damaged, usually as a result of breaking your femur, there's a huge potential for somebody to bleed out, for somebody to have a hemorrhage. So we pay attention to that particular blood vessel. This is the posterior tibial artery. Over here off to the left, we're going to have the anterior tibial. Okay, so that goes back. It's hard to tell here because we're looking at a flat image. If we actually were in lab, you would be able to tell the difference between the posterior tibial and the anterior tibial. And then we have the fibular. Okay, blood vessels going out to your foot. You do not need to worry about. We're just dealing with the femoral, and then I'm throwing in the posterior tibial, anterior tibial, and the fibular. Again, because you have a situation here where these blood vessels run right next to the tibia and the fibula, and it's very easy for, if you have a complete fracture, for these blood vessels to be lacerated as a result of a fracture. So you just need to be able to, oh, finally, the last bit of circulation that you need to pay attention to. Right here, you're looking at the iliac region and the left arm of blood vessel man. You can see the coronary sinus over here. You can see the right pulmonary artery leaving out to the lungs. Down here, you see the ascending, okay, blood vessels coming up to the heart. So this is going to be the inferior, leading to the inferior vena cava over here. Now, since we're looking at the posterior view, this is the right, this is the left, just like on us. Here's the liver. Here's the descending aorta branching out to the common iliac. We have the, in addition to all of this, we have vasculature going out to the right and the left kidneys. So the vasculature going out is going to be the left renal. So right here would be the left renal. This would be the right renal vasculature. We have the superior mesenteric artery, which is, you can't really see it, so I'm not going to ask you about that one. The inferior mesenteric is right here, though, and the inferior mesenteric branches to the right common iliac and the left common iliac over here, okay? After that, you guys can go down just to the femoral, okay? So the right and the left common iliac. And then we get to the femoral and then the tibial and so forth. All right, we will pick up on respiratory on the next video.